Hi, and welcome back to the Always Right podcast. I'm author Karisa and
I'm Jaime Vendera.
And we have a special guest today, and I'm going to let Jaime take over and introduce our guest.
I'm excited today because I love this guy. This is Mr. Jeff Rivera. And Jeff, I don't even know how long ago we met. It was like 2008 or 2009. We discussed this. You don't even know how you found me, but you had interviewed me for Huffington Post talking about Mythbusters and some other stuff. But I really can't even remember how we hooked up.
Can I put $20 on the line to say how y'all met?
Yeah, go ahead. Could have been your sister.
No, you met in the water bottle aisle getting jugs of water.
Oh, you mean this?
Yes.
Right here.
Jeff, where's yours?
I know you got one.
Yeah, mine's right here. I got my water bottle right here.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Cheers.
So, I don't remember. I'm sure it was initially via email. I don't know how I got your email, and we talked and we clicked right away, and then we became like brothers, like almost immediately. And one of the things I loved about Jaime that really made him stand out was not only because he's multi-talented, but because he is a giver. And it's so rare to find like a person who gives as much as they take, and he actually gives more than he takes, and that really stood out for me. Like, oh wow, there's somebody who really cares. So,
you say that, but man, you have mentored me a lot. We've spent hours upon hours. If I had to pay you as a consultant, I would have paid you thousands and thousands of dollars because you've helped me out a lot along the ways. So
thank you. Well, you too. You've done a lot for me. You've done things for me that nobody has, and been there for me just as a friend. You know, the things I've gone through, all the drama and things, relationships, and whatever else, and pets and all kinds of stuff like that. You know, so
I'm close to your sister too. So Sass has been my student, and we're good friends.
That's right. You're close to my close to my sister, and love that. And so I mean, we've been there for each other through thick and thin, and you're one of the fun people I could just joke around and say all those kind of jokes, the jokes that you shouldn't ever say on the air, like and you think nothing of it. In fact, you jump right in.
Yep.
I've had to edit some of those jokes out. I'm like, well, I shouldn't put that on the podcast. Let's just take that out of there.
I was like, went right over my head. I don't understand the words coming out of my mouth. Jeff,
right, exactly.
I kind of want you to give everyone an overview of who you are. Please don't list your whole resume. We do not have 3 hours.
We'll be here for like 2 hours. Yeah.
I mean, what he sent us, he's like, that's just a smidgen of it. But the one thing I want to say that you repeat is, I've thought I've written a lot of books. I've ghost-written, co-written, personally written over 60 books, probably closer to 100 if I'm like producing. And I'm like, you're double that easy. You've written like over 200 books, which blows my mind. But there's so much more to you. So can you give us a rundown on some of the stuff that you do?
The highlights of that.
Yeah, I was born in a poor town in Salt Lake. No, but I actually was born in Salt Lake City, of all places. People like Salt Lake City. And then I grew up in Oregon. And from the time I was about 6 or 7 years old, I was a writer. And I didn't know it was called writing. I loved to do it. I would write little stories about kids in class, and they would say, like, you better watch out. Or Jeff's going to write a story about you. And so I just loved to write stories, and I would read stories to my sister, and she would encourage me and tell me that was really good. And I was very fortunate that the teachers recognized my talent and put me in the talented and gifted program for writing at a very early age. So I knew I had some talent, and my goal, my dream was to be an author, like a published author. And I was able to, long story short, accomplish that. Years later, I started out really self-publishing. I'd never really written a novel before at all. And so I thought, well, I really want to make this novel. I had this screenplay that I've been toying with for a long time, and I thought, well, this would make a great novel. A friend of mine told me that, and I thought, okay, well, I'll do that. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew how to tell a story. And I went online. I found some message boards. Remember message boards back in the day?
I do.
Not those kind, Jamie.
No, I had one for Voice Connection for like 10 years. Okay. So, not the right ones.
I was in a G-rated message board, and I connected with the people, and I would show them just extras like, hey, do you think, is this any good? And they just loved it. And they started downloading the story as I wrote it, and they were, spreading all over the place. And I thought, was amazing. So by the time that I finished writing it, there were, I think, tens of thousands of downloads, if I remember correctly. And long story short, serendipity. I mean, I ended up uh, joining this newsletter, which had a post about Warner Books, and that this editor was looking for books that were with Latino characters. And I thought, well, mine is. So I sent mine in. I called her. She kind of said, oh, yeah, sure, to send it in. And then another long story short, I didn't really hear from her for months. So I got an agent, a book agent. And the way I got my agent was I spam blasted all of publishing. Didn't even say dear sir or to whom it all was an excerpt of the book, just the first chapter. That's it, in a little cover, nothing else. And I had, like, I think half a dozen people from publishing, book publishers, editors, respond back to me wanting to read this book. I think I had 2 or 3 agents, but one in particular really gravitated towards the story. She loved it, and I ended up signing with that agent. I told her I'd submitted it to Warner Books, and she goes, "Oh, I know the editor." And so she called her, let her know that she's representing the editor, who hadn't read it over the weekend, and had an offer for me on Monday. So, so I mean, right away, and so they acquired the rights to this self-published book, and that was the beginning of my career. I had no idea it was going to change the rest of my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. From there, I started to do more writing. I started interviewing people in publishing, which led me to writing for Huffington Post, and that's how I met Jaime. And I learned I was really good at putting people together, and so I discovered I was a producer all along. And I went out of the country, came back into the country, and I put together this virtual event with just senior level executives from film, television, and audio. And one of the people who came along was Judith Kerr. She's the president publisher of Harper One Publishing, which of course is one of the biggest publishers in the world. And I saw all these business deals being done on this virtual event I put together. And I said, I know there's got to be money in this. I just don't know how to make it. She said, well, you should meet this colleague of mine named Lavelle Levette. And I think you guys will hit it off. And she was right. We did hit it off. We decided to form this collective. And this collective, I put together a couple other people in it. And we started to represent some talent. We started to work on some projects together. We continue to do so. And the rest is history. I mean, so many great things have come from it. I ended up producing quite a few projects. I started to represent talent, and I got 22 development deals in about a 2-year period for unscripted television, which is like reality TV, documentaries, with big companies, and was able to get any major TV network executive on the phone, get a meeting with them. So many great things came out of it. Even before I formed the collective, I had a Disney executive reach out to me out of the blue on Facebook. I had a Netflix executive reach out to me on LinkedIn out of the blue. So things started to really kind of fall into place. And I started to, I produced, co-executive produced the American Reality Television Awards, which was hosted by Vivica Fox. Yeah, it had, Simon Cowell, Courtney Cox, Reba McEntire. So many people were on the show. So many great things happened in the last few years. But my heart is in writing. My heart is in creating. My heart is in telling stories. And I'll grab an iPhone and make a film. I don't really care. I'll animate something on the desktop. I'll write and put it up on Kindle. I just want to create. And so much has happened in the last year that I'd love to talk to you about.
Oh yeah. So real quickly, and I'm not, this time it's really funny because normally I make the show notes up and, Jaime reads them and reads them typically the morning of. And so we must have flipped roles this morning because Jaime wrote the show notes for this one. I was super busy this morning and I was reading them like as I'm getting up and making my coffee and getting ready. So it's a little flipping of roles this morning. So if this question wasn't on the list that Jaime had asked, I would like to know, what was your first book about? Or what was genre? What was the style?
Well, like even when I was a kid, when I was writing books, or like my first professional book.
Your first professional book.
Okay, because when I was a kid, I don't even remember what it was about.
I remember my first book from third grade.
You do remember it?
Yeah, I was in the like they had the tag program, but back then it was called GTP. Yeah. And so one of the things that they have you do is write books whenever you are first doing this. So in third grade, I wrote a book, and then in fourth grade, I wrote a book. I totally forgot about those. I wish I knew where they were. But the first one was Miss Doffitt's Missing, and it was my teacher, and I did a whole thing where she was missing, and everybody had to find her. So
I love that.
Yeah. So yeah,
really
but
cool.
what was your first book that you published?
What's funny, because I was actually in the same program in third grade, the tag program.
Oh.
Yeah. That first book, I think, was like a book about a bunch of kids on an island. I don't even remember what it was. But my first professional book is called Forever My Lady. And it is a love story about a kid who ends up in prison boot camp, and he's trying to change his life around to win back the love of his life. And it's a really cool story. It was very well received, and it really started my career and changed everything about my life. So it's a cool story.
Well, you flip multiple genres, though. That's what I love about you, because I remember when Daniel Middleton and I started writing, he's like, we need a bunch of pen names because you can't write horror, you can't write romance, you can't write sci-fi. And at the time, that was less than 20 years ago, there was still that stigma about, branching out. But, when I took over and Karisa came along, I was like, screw it. I'm not going to have pen names. I'm going to, I wrote all these genres. So I know that you use some pen names, but a lot of times you use your own name. So it kind of brings us to the topic of today, because you had mentioned wanting to talk about speed writing to give something back to our listeners. And I can't think of how many people I've ran into who's like, I've been writing a book. It's been on my shelf on an old typewriter for 13 years or 47 years, or I started on my iPad, but that was 7 years ago, and I just can't find the time to write. And then they never become an author. So everyone has a book in them. Everyone can release it. So I'm hoping.
Yeah, we have an episode titled "I'm Not a Writer Yet."
Yes, exactly. So I'm hoping you can share some of your wisdom, considering you've written over 200 books, on how we can speed up the process and help these authors get to the finish line.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first challenge people face is more of a mental challenge of whether or not they can do it. They might say that they have writer's block, or they've got so many ideas they don't know which one to choose because they don't want to waste time.
I don't believe in writer's block. It doesn't exist. I'm
literally laughing.
You're either bored or you're inspired.
We had an episode where Jamie and I debated writer's block. And so I believe in writer's block as definitely a mental wall that you have to get around, where Jamie's like, you don't have writer's block, you're just bored. I'm like, I'm never bored.
That's my attitude.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing people have to kind of get past is there a story you're really dying to tell? And why do you want to write it? Is it for the money? Is it because you want to tell a story? And there's nothing wrong with writing only for the money. Just be honest with yourself about why you want to do it.
Agreed.
So that's the first step. And there's nothing wrong with writing it just for money, but if there's a story you really want to tell, then it doesn't matter if you sell one copy or you sell 100 million, because you're gonna tell it either way. If you're writing it only for the money or mostly for the money, it's a different approach, because you're going to write more of what the audience probably wants to read. So that's the first step, is why you're writing it. Once you decide what that is and you're honest with yourself, then it's about just get anything on paper. Some people will talk about, sort of diarrhea on paper, or puking it out,
brain dumping.
Word dumping, purging. And that way it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be filled with typos. No one's ever going to really take a look at it until you become very famous and they want to see how it became what it became. But you have to kind of sort of get over yourself. And that's the first step. So I wouldn't worry about even story structure, any of the different paradigms that you could just get hero's journey. I wouldn't worry about any of that stuff in the first draft. Just get something on paper. And then it's kind of out of use. So from there, you can start building like a really great story. Now, there's two different types of writers. They say there's there's the pantsers, and then there's the outliners, and there's people who kind of do a hybrid of both. And for those who may be very much beginners, pantser is someone who just comes with the story along the way. They don't really plan it; they just kind of see what happens. And then one outliner is someone who plans ahead and decides what's going to happen from beginning to end, and then they just kind of craft it in that way. You could be both. You could be both. But the point is just get something on paper.
I'm an outliner, and Jamie is a.
Yeah, I'm a pantser for sure.
Why am I not surprised?
I'm excited. I'm like, I don't want to know the ending. I want it to unfold as I'm writing.
Yeah, there's a beauty in that. There's a beauty in that, and I've done both. I kind of do a little bit of both.
I'm moving from the screen for just a second. I'm still here. I'm still listening. I just have to. I'll be right back. But I'm listening.
Okay.
I guess I outline if I'm doing nonfiction books, because then I'm meticulous and kind of anal about it, and I look at it like I'm doing a workshop. So I got to know the beginning, middle, and ending.
Yeah. The most important thing is to get it out on paper, and that's the first step. So I wanted to talk about like how to do speed writing, and we talked about first you need to decide why you're doing it, and then secondly you need to just get something on paper no matter what. So this speaks to I would say more outliners more than anything what I'm about to say.
Shucky darns for Jamie.
I'll be right back in a half an hour.
So I would say what really has helped me is to remove any obstacles. So it could be because you just want to get something on paper. One of the best ways to do it is to dictate it. And you can use you can use one of those pricey softwares like there's a Dragon Speech. You can use your phone, which has a free one. You can use Google Docs as a free one. It doesn't matter, because as I've said to Jamie many times, and he agrees, that the audience doesn't care how the sausage is made. They just care that it's juicy.
I don't know. Every time I've seen sausage made, it makes me not want to eat sausage.
You must not be having the right kind of sausage, Karisa.
Well, my family's Polish, so I like a good kielbasa.
Okay, there we go. So you just so that's one thing you can do to kind of speed things up, is just to dictate, because then your hand's not going to get tired. You're not going to get all cramped up. You can walk around. You can go outside and take a walk, do your exercise while you're writing. You can do other things just to kind of get it out. And so that's one tip I have for you, anybody who wants to just speed write, is you don't worry about even punctuation. You definitely don't worry about typos, because there's ways to clean it up. And we'll talk about that in a moment. So you just want to get that out on paper. Another thing that you can do when you are outlining is model it after a story that's really successful, or a movie. Look at the way that they structured their story, at least act by act. Like, how did they set it up? How do they introduce the character? If it's a certain genre, there's certain tropes that are expected, whether it be romance or it be mystery. You must give the audience what they expect in that way. Otherwise, they're going to be very upset with you. And people say they want original content and want something fresh and snappy. They don't. They want the same thing. They want more of the same. So how can you give them more of the same, and at the same time your take on it? So that's why they say read a lot, look at the way that people do things, watch a lot of movies and TV shows. Look how all these experts did it, and what can you do to be inspired by that?
Yep, when I was writing the Phoenix Earth, the space opera, that's exactly what I did. I was watching Stargate, I forget what the one where they were in outer space, Battlestar Galactica, the TV series, anything that was in that area. I was just studying and seeing how characters interacted with each other, how, exactly what you said, how the scene's built. So, yes, I dive into Netflix when I'm writing a series like that.
Yeah, getting in the mood of that, and I would say the different genres, like so let's say you're a sci-fi sci-fi writer. I would say exactly what you said, Jamie. Go watch sci-fi films and TV shows for inspiration. Go watch foreign films, see how they do things. But look at the way there's certain tropes and certain expectations that people of that genre want, and you must give it to them. Otherwise, they may know how to articulate it, but they're going to say that the book sucks. And the reason why it sucks is probably because you're not giving them what they expect. Now,
you're not following the canon of that genre. That it's kind of like when someone reads a storyline that they love, they want to go find something very similar, maybe not exact storyline, but it's like just like searching Netflix, like, oh, because you watch this, you may like these other ones. These are thrillers, these are sci-fi. If you see a movie or a show and it's listed under thrillers and it's not suspensefully thrilling, you're like, okay, this isn't in the wrong category.
Yeah. You go in expecting one thing and you're getting something else in a bad way. Like you could still make it fresh and different a little slightly and add a little layer or something, but there's certain tropes. And so that's what I would suggest also is, immerse yourself in that material, but research what tropes do people expect. Go read the 1-star reviews on Amazon of those books.
Ones are the trolls. 5 are the friends.
Yeah. So those can be trolls. They can be the trolls, but there's also a grain of truth in some of them, especially if you see consistently they're talking about the same thing over and over again, and they may not say it in the best way, but everyone's saying that the main character is flat in so many words. Like,
well, I mean, you could find that in the 2, 3, 4-star reviews too, because they'll be like, oh, I would have given this a 5-star. However, it was so predictable, So you got to take it with a grain of salt and know when they're just trolling and when they're sometimes, have you ever watched, this happened to me on Netflix, there was a really great foreign movie, like a horror movie, so good until the last scene. The last scene ruined the entire movie. And sometimes that happens too, like you do a great job and you're not giving them the ending that they wanted. And
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that's a great example of that. I mean, the last season, I think, no, it's going to get better. There's no way they're going to come out with some other movie to wrap this up and fix this mistake. Oh my God. So that's a good example. So yeah, my point is like to know the genre, know the tropes expected, so that when you start to just, dictate your story, and you don't have to dictate it, you can write it, you can type it, you can write it by pen. It doesn't really matter. The audience doesn't really care. So those are cuts a few quick tips on how to speed write. But what I would suggest to write faster is 2 things. When you're dictating, only write the dialogue and nothing but the dialogue. Just get through the scene. Don't worry about the writing and making it sound pretty. Like, just get it out, because you're trying to figure out whether this story even works. And so if you could just write only the dialogue, I go as far as, when I'm doing the first draft, only writing the climax of the scene.
Right.
Just the climax of the scene. Yeah. And just the dialogue, because then it forces you to rethink, like, oh, maybe I don't really need to begin the scene that far. I could actually be getting closer to the climax. And you'll get to see whether or not this scene even works without having to go through the entire scene, only to find out you wasted a lot of time. So then you're going to get to that first draft or second draft so fast, and you'll get to see, like, oh, actually, this works really great. Or, you know what, though? This character's really flat, and I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't actually wrote out the dialogue and wrote the climax of the scene. So if you just do those things alone, you'll get done with that first draft. I like to give myself a break, like a little kind of a palate cleanser, creative palate cleanser, by working on something else right after that first draft, so that when I look at it again, I'm looking at it with fresh eyes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So those are just a few things that you can do. Dictate it. You should write only the dialogue of the scene, and/or write only the climax of each scene. And when you look at it with fresh eyes at that point, you'll see in a matter of minutes right away what the problems are, without having to weed through like tens of thousands of words.
Yeah.
You'll see really quickly like what the issues are. And even having, if you want to, having somebody give you feedback on just that sort of almost treatment or that novella version of your novel, without having to like go through like reading all these extra words that aren't, because I think that a lot of writers there's not a lot of control over writing in terms of like sales. So sometimes writers focus on things that don't really matter, like whether you ended your sentence with a preposition, whether, I mean, all the little grammatical things that like no one really cares about, not in today's world. They really
Oh my
don't.
gosh.
It's just,
Or the two spaces after a sentence.
say it again.
The two spaces after a sentence is a debate.
Who cares? Like, who
Well,
cares?
that was created for the typing back
Exactly.
when. It wasn't because you have to do that. And I literally posted this on an author group, and the people that were like, "No, it's 2," and someone's like, "Why is it 2? It's 1," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
My
Crazy.
publishing friend from Canada, Claude Laroche, who did Colors of Your Voice with me, he been in the publishing industry, ran a publishing house for years. Double space. It's like, and he writes articles for a school, so I'm literally going back in. I know it don't matter, but I'm like ADHD about it, so I'm like, boom, boom. I'm fixing it, everything, so it's always one space.
Yeah, but if you put that in something like Grammarly will ask you, do you want 2 spaces or 1? And can you fix it all? It'll just fix all of it for you.
Yeah.
But I mean, is someone going to give you a 1-star review because you don't have 2 spaces? I think not.
Probably some old Karen.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly. So, like, it doesn't really matter. That would you rather read an amazing story that has 1 space and maybe even 1 or 2 typos, or someone who has everything perfect, but it's the most boring story ever? Like, which one do you prefer? The audience doesn't really care. So I find that sometimes writers will focus on things that don't really matter because there's so little control over sales. At least they perceive it that way. So they start fixating on these things that don't really affect the audience experience or the reader's experience or sales in any way. And it just slows the process down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I hire somebody to do that stuff. Let them do that. The copy editors, you know.
Editor is a must. That's the one thing you need to pay for. That and layout, and yes, just there's certain things you have to pay for.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, so that's what I would suggest people is like, sometimes I'll talk to writers and they're really trying to make it sound pretty and this and that. And, you know, and some people are really great stylists. I mean, they're fantastic at prose. And so there's a certain storytelling ability that goes along with that. But what you really need to care about is character, story. Is this story really moving us? So, when you go through, let's say, this dialogue draft or this climax only draft, I really focus on. Now, I've read all the books: Sid Field, Hero's Journey, Save the Cat, they name it. I've been doing this since I was a kid, right? What I find what really matters is just a couple of things. Whether you're writing a screenplay or you're writing a novel, when someone reads it, they want to know: did this grab my interest? And did it make me want to, and did it keep my interest? They want to know, can I relate to the character? Do I root for them to succeed, or am I worried about whether or not they're going to? If you just do that and that alone, you'll be in the top 1%, even if every other word's a typo, because that's all people really care about. They want to know, like, can I relate to this character? Am I rooting for them to succeed? Or am I worried about whether or not they're going to achieve their thing? You could talk about, you have to raise a central question in every scene. I'm not going to talk like that because in real life, the audiences don't care. They're not asking those questions that we do as writers. I want to speak in the language that audiences care about. And they want to know, like, do I root for the characters, you know?
So, Karisa, when I text you, do I move you? Because I want to know if it's okay if all those typos are still in. Because I use text-to-speech to her, and there's like 27 typos in 3 sentences.
But I have learned the Jaime language to know to figure it out.
Jeff has
context clues. Yeah, there's context clues where I'm like, yeah, that's what he was trying to say. But there have been moments where I'm like, wait a minute, what? Wait, what were you?
Yeah. Sometimes you have to like read it. Well, you know what? Don't you hate when you text someone, or even whether it be speech to text or not, and everything's perfect, and then it changes the word just if you press send.
Yep.
Yeah.
And like, wait, no, I didn't say the F word. Yes. I said whatever, you know.
Well, my autocorrect doesn't cuss yet, so I think it's very juvenile. It usually comes.
Well, I did say the F word, and it changed into something else.
Yeah, or it's like your mother. It's correcting you, like, how dare you cuss in this text message?
Exactly. So yeah, those are a few things I would say that are really important. Just really focusing on what the audience wants more so than another writer or your third grade grammar teacher. Like that stuff doesn't really affect.
Editing is different because
Exactly.
when I self-published the first time, I had, because I do hair, I had a salon and stuff, and I had 2 clients that were English teachers, and I had both of them read, and both of them edited different. And I was like, why, if you're both English teachers, is it different? They're like, well, because one is, in Oxford, one is this. I'm like, okay, I don't need that. And so then once I had met Jaime, even though I didn't go with Jaime at first, he did offer me an editor. And that was a really good gift because it did help me understand what I needed to do as far as a book edit versus a grammatic structure edit. So
And there's certain different types of editing.
yeah,
I'll tell you the first book that I wrote, Forever My Lady. When I tell you the typos of it all, I mean, when I got the copy edit back after they had acquired the book, whatever, the levels of red marks by the dozens on each page. I'm like, how did they even accept this thing? But they read it, they loved it, and they bought it. So
they knew they had potential.
Yeah, they knew it had potential. So I'm not saying that you should. I'm not saying. Please, I don't want anybody that's like, well, he said you should. No, I'm just saying that the focus is on the story. It doesn't mean you don't take the time to try to make it because you want the audience experience to be great. You don't want to have it filled with typos. But what I am saying is to focus on the story of the characters more so than things that you can hire out for an editor. And I just find that sometimes writers will focus on these things that aren't really as important to the audience or to the reader as they may think that it is. So.
Well, and I that's another thing. I constantly, and this is something I have to overcome my personal, self as an author. My very first book wasn't the greatest structure. I would never write it as I would today. Today I would write it completely different. I would do it, but I had so many people that loved it at the same time. But when someone's like, "Oh, what's your book?" I'm like, "Okay, this was my first book. Just remember, I learned how to write better.
Yeah.
I need to stop doing that."
I'm the same way.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's a strange, intrusive pleasure that I have when I read a famous author that I love and they have a typo. I'm like, oh, you're human too. Thank you. It's nice that it gets slipped through. Dan Brown, I have found things in Dan Brown's books that are grammatically wrong, and I'm like, oh, it feels good to see someone that's so well known and a bestseller also has problems with miss things slipping through.
Let me tell you, I get emails all the time from major publishers and editors from all the big houses, and their emails are filled with typos. So
it's so weird when you can attach a grammatic application to most of your emails. Any kind of texting, you can literally have something like Grammarly on everything and say, hey, this is spelled wrong, or hey, you probably want to restructure this. That's attached to all of my stuff, so I don't look as much of an idiot when I'm sending that stuff.
Absolutely.
Right, exactly.
So
yeah, but those are just a few things,
Okay, but Jeff, you mentioned Ingram Spark the other day, and actually they're offshoot since Ingram bought Lightning Source, and so they're for self-publishing authors to get their books out there in print. Luckily, we're with LSI, which was out beforehand. But something I noticed in LSI when we're submitting print, and I noticed this in Kindle now, they have a big new question with the check mark. It says, "Did you use AI to write this book?" What are your thoughts on it? Do you use it? Is it helpful? Is it harmful? What could you offer?
AI is a personal choice. I'm not afraid of AI. I think it's a tool. And 3 years from now, we're not going to even be having this conversation because everyone's going to be using it in some form. Again, the audience doesn't care how the sausage is made. They just care that it's great sausage. So now, whether or not you're very transparent about using AI or not is another personal choice, but I think that people don't like to be lied to. So if you say that you wrote it yourself and then you didn't, to your audience, then I think that's something to really take some thought into. But if you use it to assist and to speed things up even more so, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And truth be told, I deal with all these big authors and writers all the time. and everyone's using it. Everyone has experimented with it. When you really get a couple of beers in them or whatever this is, when they start to be honest, like, yeah, I've dabbled with it a little bit. So everyone is, they're pretending, public facing, like, oh my God, AI is going to take jobs away. But in reality, that they are even dabbling at. Now, whether they're dabbling with their current work and what they submit, I don't know. But everyone's at least experimenting with it. It's a great thing if you use it right. There are some serious issues we need to face that could jeopardize people's way of living and whatnot and rights. Those are conversations that need to be had and justified concerns for those. But overall, it's just a tool.
Right.
It was funny. I was watching this clip of the Today Show, and it was right when Photoshop came out, and I believe it was the founder and creator of Photoshop, and the journalist. He was showing this picture of a silhouette of a man on a horse, and he said, "You won't believe this, but this man and this horse aren't even weren't really shot together." She's like. She said, but people aren't going to know what to believe anymore. And now.
Haven't we always been that way, though?
Well, they used to have to manually tape and whatever they used to do before with film. But that's the way it's going to be with AI. It's just a tool. Now everyone uses some type of Photoshop when they're doing images, whether it be some app or it's actually literally Photoshop. So we will it'll just be another tool. Don't get me wrong, it's disrupting everything and doing it fast. And that's what's so shocking because people don't really like change. But it is a tool that everyone's going to use in some form or another. And if they're not already using it. But I think it's also a personal issue. If you're really against your values or you really have issues with it and that kind of thing, then no one's forcing you to use AI. So yeah,
you had trained me in AI months and months ago, but and I'm fine with that because what we had discussed is like Jaime, it's like having a personal assistant and you're bouncing ideas off of. I'm not saying to AI, I want to write a story about dragons and it's writing the story about dragons. I'm literally bullet pointing and detailing my plotting. And I'm doing my own writing, but I'm like, I may ask like, hey, I wish this was a little more descriptive. Can you give me some ideas? And then you can go back and forth with it. And so it's still your story, but it's helping you to embellish it. Maybe you want to write a 100-page book and you've only written 70 pages and, I need a little more, scenery in there. So I don't personally think there's anything wrong with that. I'm still wanting to write the bulk of the story myself, but I'm sure sometime in the future, Sigil 4 possibly will have some AI, and I'll have no problem telling LSI and Kindle, yes, I did use AI to help me finish the story. So, and really, they didn't finish the story. I will have written it all myself, but I just want it to be more vivid or more in line with how I've written the last 3 books. Sometimes you write a series and then you fall off, and like with me, I haven't finished the series. I'm like, how was my writing style, and maybe I can't get back into it. So you're like, hey, follow my old writing style. Boom. And I'm sure that will become the norm before long.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to use it. I wouldn't want it to write the whole story. I actually love writing. I actually love the storytelling process. It's something I actually have a lot of fun doing. It's why I was put here on Earth. So I will never have it write the entire thing. It's great as a personal assistant to do research. So sometimes writers will use research as a procrastination tool. And so you can ask like, hey, what color is a rose in May or whatever, and it'll quickly tell you so you can stick that in. It can go through and actually do a critique of your writing. So let's say you wrote a chapter and like, hey, give me some tips on how to make this better. It'll tell you, whatever. It'll give you a list of stuff. You can take it or leave it. If you don't know exactly like how to make a character speak a certain language or have a certain dialect, it can make some suggestions or do that for you. It can do research on popular titles and say like, okay, take all this PDF, all this data, tell me which titles or which type of genres have the highest demand but lowest competition. Which one should I try? Which month does best for thrillers? Or dumping a bunch of data and having it like review the data. There's so many things you can use it for. Now, normally, what would you do? You'd hire an assistant to do all that work manually. It would take them days, if not weeks, to do all the work.
Right.
But for those who don't have the budget to even hire an assistant, they could use AI. So
it's no different. It's no different than searching the web.
Yeah.
It's just a tool. It's just a tool, and that's the thing. We all got over like how you can Google. Everybody uses Google for the most part. A majority of people, it's just a condensed version in the writing realm for. It's almost like a writing Google. I feel like.
I mean, when Google started coming out, people were like, "Oh no, go to the library. You're going to take librarians' jobs away.
Get rid of the Dewey Decimal System."
You need to go. I mean, like, and now it sounds antiquated and ridiculous, but but people used to think that like you're going to take librarians' jobs away, you're going to take researchers' jobs away if you use Google, and now we think that's just the most ridiculous thing in the world. If anything, it actually helped them do their job better. And so AI is just another tool. You don't have to use it. No one's forcing you to use it if you don't want to use it for whatever reason. And you don't need to justify whether or not you use it or not, because it's really none of anybody's business. The problem comes when you're lying about it, saying that I didn't use it to your audience when you did. That's the thing people care about. But I think the general audience, I think the typical, John Smith, Mary Sue in the world, they just want a great story. Now, here's the other thing is that there are, when you put out a book traditionally published, there's a team of people who are helping you make that writing stronger. Does that mean the author didn't write it? I think not. You have a line editor.
That's a really good point.
But so instead of hiring, a line editor, a substantive editor, a copy editor, a proofreader, this or that, this and that, a co-writer, you are doing all that with just a click of a button. Now, is it going to take jobs away? Guess what? Maybe I didn't have the budget to hire a line editor, a typical editor, a copy editor, a proofreader. I'm not taking jobs away because those jobs would never have been available anyway. So, but now I can get my writing at the level of a professional without having to budget that kind of thing. And I'm sure there's going to be people who will be picket and signs like we shouldn't use AI for this, but let's get real.
Well, this is something we've had on previous episodes. Because I'm a college student at Arizona State University currently, and they've embraced AI. However, you're not allowed to use it when they specifically ask your own words, and they have a counter application to know that you wrote it in your own words because of AI. AI has a flip side that when you submit something, it can plug it in there and see how fast you wrote it.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, so like teachers can say, "Oh, I really don't think this student wrote this because they've not produced anything like this year." They go in, apply the application, and it can show the timing of the writing, whether it was a copy paste.
Interesting.
You wrote it out or erased. Yeah, it can tell whether you did that or not now. So
and the thing is,
it's having its own fail safe.
You want to be a writer, like you want to be a storyteller. It's not about at least for me, like I enjoy the writing process. If I can have somebody help me, and I've co-written projects with people, I've ghostwritten for other people. So there's different types of writing, and you have to look at what you're really strong at. Maybe you're a really good storyteller, but maybe you have learning differences and you're not really great at sentence structure.
Right.
Maybe you're really great at prose, but you're not so great at dialogue. Maybe you're great at dialogue, but not so much prose. Maybe you're good at one genre but not another. But if you can find a way to be able to I have a really good friend of mine. He has dyslexia, and he's written several books with AI. He just basically dictates. He said there was no way I'd be able to write this story because I have dyslexia. I haven't been able to. I can't write, but he's brilliant. So AI helps him take what's in his brain and put it on paper. And otherwise, do you imagine how many brilliant people out there who maybe are not particularly educated, who so many ideas that are going to be able to put those ideas out there in the world because of the help of AI. So if someone's only focusing on the negative, that's all they're going to see. But there's a lot of
those who don't do usually judge what others do.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
All the and that's a great point though. So a lot of times people have these amazing, vivid imaginations of new worlds and all these things, but are not so charismatic with their words. So AI is an amazing tool be able to take what's in your head and put on paper, which leads me to this question. And prior to heading to London, I text Jaime. I was like, I have found, because I was like kind of going through some AI programs. We've utilized the Chat GPT and just kind of played around with it and experimented with. We did the AI episode for authors, but I've since further I'm going to experiment with some that are specific to writers, because a lot of times some of the AI that's there is not made for fiction writing. It's made for nonfiction and corrections and inspiration and improvement. But I found one, and maybe you've used this one. I text Jaime about it, where you can literally brain dump. You can build characters. You're doing all the writing. You're creating the worlds. You're creating the characters. You have to fill in all this information to it's almost like a way to organize your book thoughts. And then you can submit your writing like a chapter sample, and it's it'll analyze it and say, okay, this is your writing style. So what it's going to do is going to keep you on point as you're writing. Like, you've kind of missed the mark. You're not keeping the same flow. You've created those flat characters, and you're not creating a character that you said they were. You know what I mean? So that's cool. Good. Yeah. It's like almost a writing personal assistant that I found. And I'm like, but I'm writing everything. I've spent more time writing in this thing, trying to build the stuff. So when I'm actually writing my chapters and I submit it in there, it's like, okay, you missed this on this point, and you said this about this character, but this is actually what you said. And so it helps you, so you don't miss certain things. But it's not writing it for you.
Right. And the thing is, you could do both. You can get it ready, develop it, and then hand it off to a human editor to do the finishing touches, which I encourage people to do.
Oh, absolutely.
But by the time that they get it, you've done the heavy lifting, so they're not having to spend,
Yeah, because it's still nice to have a human who can connect with you, look it over, and that brings me from AI to JI, Jeff Intelligence. Because I know that you offer a lot of these services. I know that you there's been big people from Disney or Netflix, I may be wrong, I'm pretty sure it's those and other companies that send you screenplays or books that you've had to read through and critique to give your thoughts. So tell me, I know we got to go in a second, but tell me a little bit about that, and let people know how they can get a hold of you, because I know you do this on the daily, that you're critiquing. So I want to let people know that you do offer this service.
Yeah. So I've had, since I was 17, I've had professional level writers send me stuff. I had a knack for kind of seeing what works and what doesn't work in a story. So I've really huge authors have sold tens of millions of copies of their books, have asked me to look at their books. Oscar winners have asked me to look at their scripts and stuff like that early on. Let me tell you that no one's first draft is good. So everyone's first draft sucks. That's not how much time you put into it. So the only difference between sometimes we are incredibly talented, don't get me wrong, but the only difference between maybe what you see on the screen or in the bookstores and maybe your writing possibly is because the amount of time they put into, or the team they put together to help it make it better. So in terms of, to answer your question, I can definitely help anyone basically as a writing coach or a motivation coach. So if it means helping you put together a team to get your book out there, critique your story, if it means helping you come up with a marketing plan or how to get motivated, get out of bed and just get something on paper, or to navigate, going from book to film, to how to get actually Hollywood interested in coming to you, which is the best way to get people coming to you. It's a new world. I highly recommend people think about doing things independently or hybrid, because this way, like I mentioned, Hollywood will come to you. They've come to me. Publishers have come to me before I had any of these accolades. And I know a lot of people where that's happened. So they're actively looking for people who've got great writing, great storytelling. So I can kind of navigate and help people and inspire people about that. So yeah, you can reach out to me. My email is jeff@jeffrivera.com. That's jeff@jeffrivera.com if you have any questions. And
JEFF, not GEOFF.
Exactly. Not like Jeffrey from what do you call Toys R Us? No.
Yep.
Yeah. The Jeffrey the giraffe.
This is actually JEFF. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jeff, we have truly, truly appreciated you coming on this morning and sharing your wealth of knowledge, of course. And it's definitely something that I feel like we can expound on more, maybe have you back on, and maybe you could talk about ghost writing, some of the other little, even screenplays in general. Maybe we can isolate some of the stuff you've done in the future, and you can give us a little tips for our listeners. So because I allowed Jaime to kind of open up, I'm going to allow Jaime to finish.
Don't make me do this. You know how I am. Okay, if you want to learn anything about us, go to allwayswritepodcast.com. We have all these little icons at the bottom where you can listen to us on Apple Music. You can watch us on YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram. And if you need to speak with either Chris or I, if you have a question, if you have a topic you'd like us to cover on the podcast, you can reach out to us at allwayswritepodcast@gmail.com. Did I get it right?
Yes.
Did I miss anything? All right. Job. So I am author Jaime Vendera, and this is...
I'm author Karisa DeLay. We are so thankful, and we appreciate you listening. Until next time, always write.